Hey everyone, let's get set up here. This is John from Creation Music Company, and we're doing a live stream to show you how to make this MIDI cable. So bear with us, it's our first time going live on YouTube, but we figured this would be a great way to give you some instructions, as our website does both supply to let you make your own cables as well as we make cables for you. So let's get started here. I'm going to flip the screen around and we're going to just give you an overhead shot of my hands. We can talk you through that. Okay, so actually we're going to flip that. So I have a little clip for my phone. It's going to allow you to see overhead exactly what I'm doing. Okay, let's flip this around. Okay, here we go. Try that one more time. Perfect. Okay. So this is a switchcraft style MIDI plug. So the cool thing about these plugs that's so awesome is that they're rotatable, meaning that this position of the pins, if you loosen the set screw on the side just a little bit, allows you to rotate them so that when you're plugging it into your pedal, the orientation can change and it doesn't create an issue. So we sell these on our website in pre-configured options. We can do it with either a straight end, which does not rotate, of course, it's straight, or this rotatable end for your pedal. So like I said, you can go all the way to making this pedal or this cable basically coming out at 90 degrees if you rotate it enough, okay? And then of course put it back to center, and there you go. So lock it tight and then it won't move. I think it has either 5 or 7 positions it can go in, so various angles of, it's not just any particular angle, it's got actual positions it goes in. So we're going to show you how to actually solder this. Okay, so for starters, I've started this cable already. I've got one side done. I've got my heat shrink on there for our logo of our company. And then of course, one thing you always want to remember when you're soldering stuff is to make sure whatever pieces are going to go on are already on there before you solder, because you will literally just hate yourself if you get a ways through soldering it and realize you forgot the piece that has to go on, and you have to desolder the plug, and you literally just want to, go on a rampage and be angry at everything in the world. So I've already stripped the cable back a little bit just to give you guys proper measurements. This is just a little bit more than an inch, okay? Now, what we do when we solder these is we actually do solder the ground. There's 5 pins. Now, most guitar signals only need 3 for your pedal board and whatnot. But we go ahead and we make it all the way that way in case you use it for another application, such as another music device that actually is trying to send power. You need those additional cables so it can power the device with MIDI. All that to say, what we do is when we solder the ground, we don't actually use all of these ground wires. When you pull them all back and twist them up, they'll be too thick to fit in these tiny itty bitty barrel holes, okay? So what we do is we start to spread open the cable, and it's gonna go in the order of ground, black, ground in 3, black in 5, you might wanna write this down, white in 2, and green is 4, and then red is 1. Those are your different pins, and they're numbered on here. You can see them. So if you follow that along, you can make sure you have them in the right pins. But because they're going in that order, I want to just go ahead and use ground that's nearest the black already versus trying to spin it around the cable. Okay, so all that to say, I'm going to pull a little ground wire here that's already near the black, and then everything else I'm going to pull aside, and we're just going to cut it off. All right, so we'll take all that around. That's part of this. There we go. Okay, I only need a little bit of the ground wires. The rest of this, I'm going to separate, twist it up, and just cut it off, okay? All right. And with my snips, just Get that off. I don't need it. Okay? All right, so take your ground here and twist it up. Make it nice and tight and small. The idea is everything in this is going to be a very small solder joint. So some solder skills would be ideal if you've already soldered things in the past. It's not difficult. It's not really hard. It's just a little tedious is the best word I have for that. Okay, so get that nice and tight. Now, as far as things you need, obviously you saw me use my snips. Wire strippers are handy. You don't have to have these, but it's really nice to have some tweezers. A set of helping hands is always ideal. Again, you can get by with a lot of this stuff even if you don't have it. Now, the actual solder, or excuse me, the actual MIDI plug can be used with either a flathead or this little star drive bit, which is what we use. Okay, that's what you need to open up. But you can use it with a flathead, and that'll work just fine. So if you don't have the star drive, don't sweat it, no problem. Okay, so move those out of the way. Now, the other thing is obviously you're going to need a soldering iron. If you're going to put any sort of heat shrink on there, you would want a heat gun. And then the last but not least is I like working with flux. It's not absolutely necessary, but with these small joints, it really helps to put a drop or two of flux in there so that the solder soaks in really fast versus sitting there and heating it up like crazy and it taking forever. Okay, so let's get started on this. All right, so one thing I need right off the bat is this little silver piece, or excuse me, this little brass piece that comes in. Slip that over. Yeah, we got a storm going. I don't know if you can hear that, but thunderstorms in the background. All right, slip that over and don't take that off. That's going to stay there. And like I said, I already have my rubber boot on. Now, as far as heat shrink goes, we used to heat shrink them right there at this boot, but what we do is now is we put the heat shrink right in the middle. That way, it doesn't make it harder for the cable to bend. That way we get our logo on there, but you're not making it harder to bend the cable where it needs to be. Heat shrink is a little bit less flexible, so it makes this not want to bend. And when you're coming out of the back of a big Sky or Strymon pedal and it's going straight down to the board and you're getting that rotation already, you want it to go just like that and not have to worry about it. So we moved our heat shrink to the middle. Anyway, so let's do this. First thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna put a little flux right here on the ground and start top and drag down. Okay, so I'll try and do this where you can see. Start up high, just take a drop, and then slide it down, okay? Same thing with our solder. So I'm going to take my iron, which is already hot, make sure it's clean, okay? Put a little solder on it, and just drag that down, okay? Now, your other wires, okay, you're going to want to use your wire strippers, and for these, since they're so small, I use the 0.05 hole, and you're going to want to just barely snip any off, or not snip, excuse me, strip any off. Okay, don't snip your wires even shorter, you don't want to do that. Okay, go to black. All right, and last but not least, green. All right, now, put a very, very, very small amount of flux on each. Okay, and same thing. This is called tinning your wire. Put a little bit of solder on there, and I'm gonna do all four of them like that. Now, one thing you can do, and I did this on purpose so you can see it. If you run into a mistake where it doesn't want to fit into these holes because you didn't twist it tight enough, I actually didn't twist these on purpose so that this would happen. If you take your snips and you go and basically cut it sharper, that'll help you get in the hole. Same thing on that ground, okay? So this ground is actually a little thicker than I would like, and I'm going to snip it at an angle and basically sharpen it, okay? So as far as soldering goes, what I typically do is I take a set of helping hands and I put them at an angle. One side for the actual MIDI plug, okay, and the other side for the cable, all right? So what I like to do is just go ahead and get my ground in there and get it started. That way the two are held together, and don't try and do all at once. Go ahead and do one. Best way to start is the ground, okay? And just Put a little solder on that joint, hold, and then that should be fine. It really doesn't take much for these. Okay, so next, remember what I was saying about the order. So pin 3 is your ground, pin 5 is black, pin 2 is white, pin 4 is green, and pin 1 is red. So all I have to do is take my individual wires with the tweezers and just stick them in all their pins where they go. Now you want to be careful, because this plug rotates, you want to be careful that you don't have too much wire stripped out. So that's why I said you want to strip very little. And the reason why is when you go to rotate this thing, if the wire is stripped so far back that it then bends and they come into contact with each other, the whole cable is useless at that point. So you really don't want to strip very much at all. Okay, so then I need my green wire. Go ahead and take green. And I will get an up close shot here in just a minute. I'm going to go ahead and solder them down here on the helping hands so you can see me soldering them, and then I'll give you an up close shot once I'm done. Okay, so I've got all my pins in there. Okay, let's go ahead and solder each. Just put the iron on, touch a little solder to it, hold for a second so you see it soak in, and then let go. And careful that you don't accidentally touch 2 pins at the same time and bridge them. You don't want to accidentally solder 2 things together. Okay, so I want to give myself better access. I'm going to rotate this over. Now the green likes to keep coming out, so just push that in a bit more. There's one, and the next. All right. Take a look at it. Make sure everything looks good. I think I'm good. All right, give you guys a better up-close shot of that. All right. Now, one thing I can see right off the bat is I'm actually going to need to strip off a little bit more, because when you go to assemble this, the boot comes up, and this wants to go down, but it's pulling on the cable to do it. So I'm going to strip off just about a quarter, maybe in quarter, but it's between a quarter of an inch and an eighth of an inch off more. So it's actually good because I didn't show you how to strip in the beginning. All right. Pull that off, and then all that extra ground is back. Going to separate that and then just snip it again. And we'll just sweep up when we're done. All right, so this can go down a bit further. Okay, this brass sleeve makes contact with the ground, which makes contact with the housing. It also, the big thing it does is it allows those wires to rotate in place. Okay, all right, so bring that back up. Put our side piece on, and make sure the ground and everything's all bent out of the way of the screw. All right, set that on there. Okay, and then take your set screw on the side. I always just finish them in what I call middle position. Go ahead and put the set screw through. All right, and that's done. And measure it real quick. And I wanted it 8 inches. I have exactly 8 inches between the edges of each boot, which is perfect. All right, so cable's done except for shrink tube. So that's real simple. Just take a heat gun, and roast a marshmallow. Just keep it moving. If you ever have worked with a heat gun, you know that if you hold it in one spot too long, you'll start to get a nice shiny spot on the cable or the heat shrink itself, because it was just held too long, and you don't want that. And then while it's cooling, it's important to hold it straight when you do in the middle like this, because otherwise it'll cool with a curve and then it'll be permanently wanting to curve. So I like to do it nice and straight, let it cool, touch it a little bit, all right, and set it down, okay? And that's a finished MIDI cable. The only thing left is to test it, which if you have one of these, they're very handy. I've got MIDI ports on either side, so I can plug in there, and pin 1, 2, 3 is ground, 4, 5 all have connection, and nothing is lit up that shouldn't be. There's no cross wires, so it's not lit up, you know, one of the pins on 3 as well as on 5. They're all individual, and that's exactly what I want. So, oh, and then of course the red light shows up for ground, which is again on 3, so perfect. Okay guys, thank you so much for watching. Let's flip this down and I bid you farewell. I hope that was helpful. I know it's a little long-winded sometimes, but this is our first attempt at a YouTube Live. Let us know in the comments below if you want us to do more of that. Of course, if you want any of the products that you're seeing us use, we do sell these plugs as well as bulk cable on our website, creationmusiccompany.com. We used to have a separate DIY site. We recently merged them, adjusted our pricing, and made it much easier to buy. So everything you need, everything I use today as far as the actual components to make this cable are all on our website, creationmusiccompany.com. Feel free to reach out with any questions. info@creationmusiccompany.com is our email for any of those questions, and we hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much.